podcast where great minds meet. This is definitely a treat. In terms of the guests we've had big players in the science, technology, engineering, and education space. This is a explore the profound ideas shaping the intersections of art, science, and culture. Today, we have the honor of hosting DJ Caruso, a masterful storyteller who has redefined cinematic narratives across a variety of genres. In this special episode, we'll be discussing his latest project, Mary, a Netflix exclusive biblical epic that delves into the remarkable journey of Mary, Joseph, and the birth of Jesus. This promises to be an enlightening conversation about faith, courage, and the art of filmmaking. As always, please download and share this episode to spread inspiration and insight. So DJ Caruso is a renowned director, producer, and screenwriter whose diverse body of work spans thrillers, dramas, horrors, and action films. With critically acclaimed projects like Disturbia and I Am Number 4 under his belt, DJ Caruso is now bringing his vision to Mary, a cinematic take on a timeless biblical story. Featuring a stellar cast led by Anthony Hopkins and Noah Cohen, Mary reimagines the courage and humanity behind the story of Jesus' birth. Yes, it's definitely a treat. So you've worked across a variety of genres. What drew you to a biblical epic like Mary, and how does it align with your vision as a filmmaker?
Well, what drew me was the character of Mary. Obviously, it's like each film has its own sort of DNA and takes on its own form. But to me, I felt cinematically, Mary had sort of been underappreciated and never really seen a story told from her perspective and her point of view. I've seen her be part of many other films and many other things, but never one from her perspective. And so I thought, if I can take this movie and put the viewer in insular with Mary and see her experiences and also give it a real human quality and make Mary a human who had apprehensions and fears and someone that a viewer can relate to, not just this woman that we all love and worship, or it really to make the experience immersive and to tell her story. And that was really my goal, because I felt she's an incredible role model out there to say, like, it took great courage to do what she did. She had apprehensions and she had fear, and there's a real human quality that I think hadn't really been explored cinematically. So that's what got me into saying, yeah, I want to tell this story.
Oh wow, it's very interesting. So definitely taking it from perspective of her being the center figure of the story. So Mary offers a deeply human perspective on a revered figure. How did you navigate the balance between honoring tradition and presenting a relatable, fresh take?
Well, most importantly, we started with the scripture and kind of what we knew and what everyone knows to be the sort of the story of Mary and what some call the nativity story. So we looked at Matthew, we looked at Luke, the Gospels, and really built the foundation of the story that we're familiar with, and then ultimately said, okay, how do we broaden that, and how do we really tell her story, what it was like, Mary's birth, and to go all the way through her delivering the child, Christ child, to the temple. And so really what I did was just say, look, this is an artistic interpretation. This is my artistic interpretation, still paying reverence to the scriptures of what I feel like this would be like. This is the story I'd like to tell. And so really got into there and just sort of branched off and decided, well, if there's a sequence where Herod is sending the Roman soldiers out to, for the slaughter of the innocents, what would it be like if Mary and Joseph are hiding in the house when the soldiers come through? So we took artistic interpretation in certain aspects to heighten the cinematic elements, while still being, paying reverence to the scriptures and the story that we're all familiar with.
Oh, this is good, man. That must have been you must have had to involve a lot of like biblical scholars to really delve into that accuracy and also make sure you reflect the cinematic qualities that you were mentioning. So,
Yeah, definitely. We had some biblical scholars and some advisors that were kind of taking us along the way. And then again, like I said, the artistic interpretation, like, great, if we kind of veer off into this tangent, is that feel right? And yeah, so it was a real great combination, a collaboration to get the story the best we could.
oh man, this is good, man. It's almost like you're doing an exegesis in three dimensions. Yeah, so the film's trailer suggests a visually stunning production. What were some of the key elements in the cinematography and design that helped you immerse the audience in this story?
Well, I decided once we started to scout and early on that in Morocco that this was definitely to me a widescreen movie, an anamorphic film. So I wanted it to look like an old-fashioned film, anamorphic, and so we chose anamorphic lenses, these Hawk vintage anamorphic lenses, which were just fantastic. That gave us the grain and the texture of sort of a film element that really had these and you'll see the film these really interesting flares that would happen when the sun or the backlight would hit the lens. It's just these beautiful, unusual flares. So that to me was really a widescreen, open like a Lawrence of Arabia in the desert sort of scope. And then at the same time, the design, the production design, I decided early on with my team was we know these biblical movies are usually brown and sort of a little bit down and there's like sand and sandals, but what can we do to add colors and to make this feel contemporary visually? So we added a lot of colors and gave Mary and the wardrobe. We studied the Japanese samurai robes and the way that the robes sort of flow and brought that element into the costume design, which I think is amazing because the way that these robes drape, it doesn't feel like you just went to, Western costume and pulled out okay, we're making a biblical movie. Give me all the robes from the biblical movie. We really customed and built each character's costumes and went to great painstaking, pain just to make sure that they flow and they felt right. So all of that element was really just about creating the scope. And then every single frame was really well cared for. There's certain times in movies where certain styles you're grabbing stuff and doing stuff, but every frame was really nurtured and sort of cultured to become a specific reason that the framing is a certain way or a certain often. When you have widescreen close-ups, I've always loved anamorphic close-ups because there's so much outside of the lens at the same time that you kind of really feel like you're more involved with the character. So there's a combination of like, let's really raise the cinematic stakes and tell a story that looks and feels contemporary that was set 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, that's good. Very good. So the themes of faith and courage are central to Mary. How did you ensure that these were authentically portrayed without feeling overly didactic or theatrical? You talk about striking a balance. So could you give us a little bit more insight into how you struck that balance, but
Well, I think
aimed the balance?
Yeah, I think finding that balance, it's always an interesting, and usually in the rehearsals and breaking down each scene, and just making sure that you're not preaching, but you're understanding human behavior. And I think the most important aspect of any successful film is that the human behavior is revealing truth and the truth in the human behavior. And I think that was an important aspect of that. And I didn't want the movie to feel like, okay, this is something I can disengage from, and know, because I know you know that Jesus was born, you know that the Titanic sank, right? So like, how do you tell the story a human element that makes it compelling? So each situation is dramatically interesting because Mary's father doesn't quite understand that she's been impregnated and how she was impregnated, and he's not really sure, and so you have this great father-daughter relationship, and does he kind of understand or forgive her? And there's a moment where she says like, Papa, it's me, I need you. And so there's a universality in the relationships and the scenes that we constructed that make it feel as organic and as real and not didactic and all these things.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a very good approach to take when it comes to portraying biblical narratives because it allows people to relate easily because they can see that the stories and issues or stories, progress, the issues, all the aspects of the common human story are being portrayed. They're relatable to me in my own personal life. So yeah, I think that's a very powerful way to explain. Yeah. So in terms of music and storytelling, music often heightens the emotional impact of the story. Can you talk about the process of selecting and integrating the film's score?
Yes, well, I worked with Timothy Williams on this first time we worked together. He's fantastic, and yeah, this was a really interesting one because even like when you're shooting the film and you're listening to music, and I listened to a lot of Morricone when I was shooting the movie, so I had this sort of like every morning I had my little 20-minute playlist in the car to get myself in the mindset, which is sort of like this classical romantic score and so what I wanted to do was see if we could combine that sort of feeling I had with this classical romantic score, but also with a really sort of modern aspect of certain things and what instruments we can play. And like, for example, we only have the piano once in this entire score, which is the very end of the movie, where we decided let's simplify it and break it down. So that's the only time you have the piano. And so we tried to say what instruments are of the land and of the time that we can integrate into sort of the electronic aspect of the score. So most importantly, what you do is right away go like, what is our theme? Like, is there a theme? Is there a merry theme? And if you've seen the film, the movie opens in a very visual way, and you get to see Mary, and she basically gives you a little bit of a voiceover about what you're going to experience or what you're going to see. And that really gave us right off the bat, as we're fading up from black, the music right away is making a statement, and you're also realizing, wow, this is an incredibly cool modern aspect of music that has a romantic feel. So right away we made a musical statement and said, like, this is the journey you're going to go on, and this is the journey you're going to take. And it was really a real great experience, and being involved with Tim and the score with a really probably one of the most hands-on I've ever been in the score or working with a composer, because it was just the way the situation happened. We had to work quickly and we had to do things fast. So to be with him and to get things to sign off, really interesting experience, and little pieces of solo things and voices and choirs and drums. And we built it, we had the great, again, like the movie, we had this great foundation, and then we kind of added all these different elements of solo artists that really helped elevate the score.
Yeah, that's good. So, how do you think modern audiences will connect with the retelling of Mary's journey, and what do you hope they'll take away from the film? So, do you think there'll be a change of perspective, a new take on the biblical story?
Yeah.
What do you hope audiences will take away from this movie?
Well, I hope that in my attempts to humanize her, that people find her much more relatable, like on a human level, that they can see like, wow, this is a young woman that is experiencing a lot of the things that are happening in the world today. There's this geopolitical unrest in the midst of everything that she's going through, and the people are divided. And here is this woman who has the courage. I want people to understand it takes courage to take on tasks like this. And when you take on tasks and you're doing something that's for the right reason, it's going to cost you. There's a great cost to doing something great. And I think that's a really important message. And the other thing I felt too in Discovery was lots of times in the biblical story like this, you feel like Mary's just been guided along the way and like she's moved like a pawn piece. And I didn't want that to be the case. I wanted you to see like what it takes and the choices she has to make. She makes the choice to say, yes, I'm all in on this. I'm let it be me. I'm all in. And that's an aspect I think that would be really important for even a younger generation to go like, hey, you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice. You're either going to go down this road or this road. And, there's man's nature and there's God's grace. Which one are you going to choose? Because that's ultimately, to me, what it comes down to. And I hope audiences really feel they're entertained, they're enlightened, and they understand that like the human aspect of this character, so that you can get closer to her or even understand the story in a way that you've never understood it before. And then if you're not religious, I feel like you have this great mythological story of a chosen girl who is, whether she's reluctant or like a reluctant hero who then takes this on and literally has to survive and deliver this gift at the end of the movie. So I think there's a great aspect to that, but I hope it enlightens people and they feel like they know the story perhaps better, but they've also experienced it in a more organic way.
And made real to them. Yeah, yeah, this is very good. Because I recently watched as we start to wrap up, I recently heard about this movie. I think it was Padre Pio. I heard about one of the actors in terms of them being influenced, in terms of changing their perspectives on their views on the world based on them acting as one of the characters in the movie. So
Right.
I think as we as people of faith, or whether the person is a person of faith or not, for people who are in the faith, when we are able to not just convey biblical narratives, but also show the unique human elements of those biblical narratives, I think we're able to draw people in and really show them, that there's truth, as you talked about earlier. There's truth to these stories, and the truth is like impactful in our daily lives and encountering.
Yes,
So
no, I agree.
Yeah, so your career spans such a wide range of projects. Are there any new genres or stories you're excited to explore in the future?
Yeah, well, I'm working on a project now that is I guess it's a drama, it's a character drama, but it has this an action base to it. It's sort of like a Hell and High Water meets The Fugitive, and it's a story of two brothers, and it's
Okay.
two brothers, one who hasn't been able to forgive the other brother for something that had happened years ago, and so it's as this journey is progressing and everyone's closing in and time is running out, can this brother find it in himself to forgive this other brother for something terrible that happened? And it also deals with what is forgiveness really? Do you forgive someone to free yourself and feel better about you? Or do you really forgive somebody to say, you're free now, you're set free, don't carry this burden anymore? So it deals with the theme of forgiveness set in a really kind of hyper tense, I guess, action oriented way.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll definitely keep my Instagram for when that comes out. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely cool. So as we start to wrap up, I always like to get some advice in terms of people who have been successful in their field for the listeners. So for listeners who aspire to make their mark in the film industry, what key lessons have you learned that you'd like to pass on?
I think the key lesson is that if you want to be in the film industry, you can't like dip your toe in the water. Like you have to go all in. Like whatever you're doing, if you're a poet, a painter, an artist, whatever you're doing, you can't just go half in and say, "Oh, I think I want to be a director. I think I want to be a writer. Oh, I think I want to be an actor." If you think it, and that's okay, but once you do it, it's a full commitment. And I think you have to do it and understand, like any character, like there's a great personal cost in sacrificing what you need to do. But I think you need to go all in. And I think the other aspect of it is too, there's going to be people that are don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, but you have to follow your heart and what you really want to do. Because I found there's sort of people that, particularly in the movie industry, there's a real romantic aspect of I want to be a director, I want to be an actor, but you really need to know, you have to ask yourself, is this what I really need to do? And if I don't do this, am I not going to be complete? Am I not going to feel fulfilled? Because if I have to do these, so my advice is like ask yourself that question and you have to say, I have to do this. And when you have to do this, you have to jump all in. You can't just do it part-time. It's not a part-time thing. It's every day of your life. It's observing people, how people talk, how people behave, what the sun looks like when it comes through a backlit dirty window. Like it's a combination of all those things. You have to free yourself in your thinking, but my advice is you have to go all in. Don't do anything halfway.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, if you wear a crown, bear a cross, you must. So yeah, I agree with you.
Mhm.
Completely agree with you. So yeah, man, thank you, DJ Caruso, for sharing your insights and incredible journey of creating the story, Mary. This conversation has definitely given me a lot of insights as to your work, the amount of how granular the work can be in terms of the details you have to go into, whether it be the lens that you're using. I didn't realize you were so specific in terms of the lenses, but that's definitely a feature that I've learned today. So to our listeners, be sure to watch Mary on Netflix and stay tuned for more inspiring conversations on where great minds meet. Don't forget to subscribe and remember, every great story starts with a curious, disciplined mind.
Excellent.